You guys are ready? I'm ready. Take front seats. Let's keep it casual. I do this every day. Thank you for being my audience. We're online. Sorry if you don't know what's going on. Are you recording it?
Yes, I'm recording. We will have the paper station later so that everyone can go and watch the video.
Okay. You want to start? Get ready? Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for this unique opportunity to speak at this event, reaching quite a large audience. I'm honored to be able to share a message and an introduction to a world that may be not exactly familiar to you, well, familiar on the surface, but that you may have heard about, but didn't quite understand and get in contact with. And the world that I would like to introduce you to carries a lot of advantages, and this is why I entitled my presentation today, The Low-Hanging Fruit, meaning it's really easily accessible, it's something everyone can do, it's much easier than we believe, and we can reap numerous benefits on the personal level, on the level of the environmental impact, as well as commercially viable business opportunities that can emerge from it. So just a quick word about myself. I'm not the kind of a person who likes quick fixes. Therefore, I believe in sustainable solutions to whatever we do. There are lots of quick fixes, magical potions, fads, trends about how to be sustainable, about how to feel well, how to make sure you look after yourself. Right? But very few of them actually work, right? What I favor instead are systemic, evidence-based, long-term, durable approaches, right? And just to illustrate this, I go to lengths of growing my own vegetables, for example, having my own little patch where I try to grow 60 to 70% of my own food, let's say. So this is the kind of no quick fix guy that is standing in front of you. The reason why I decided to go with the plant-based approach in the first place, the idea came a long time ago, probably when I was a child, because it never felt right to enslave and murder another sentient being that is a mammal that we could just as well experience feeling of love and tenderness to. So that never sat right with me. I did it, so eating meat and animal products for social reasons, under social pressure, thinking that's what's the normal thing to do, but there was always an internal conflict within myself that I couldn't resolve, and I finally found courage to take the first step after having encountered about 3 years ago this documentary that I would like to show you the trailer of very quickly, just to show you where the journey started.
Only Arnold Schwarzenegger. that idea that one man eat meat. Serious man food. But you gotta understand, that's marketing. That's not based on reality.
I've been teaching fighting techniques to government agencies for more than 15 years. Then, I got injured. Unable to teach for at least 6 months. I spent more than 1,000 hours studying science on recovery and nutrition. I stumbled across a study about the Roman gladiators.
The gladiators were predominantly vegetarian.
How could the original professional fighters be so powerful on the only plants?
When I made the switch to a plant-based diet, I qualified for my third Olympic team. I broke 2 American records. I was like, man, I should have done this a long while ago.
When I went plant-based, I wasn't sure if I was going to survive. And I actually became like a machine.
One of the biggest misconceptions in sports nutrition is that we have to have animal protein to perform at a high level. That's just not true.
Sometimes you have to do things that you know your competitors aren't doing.
Today is blood, and yesterday is blood. Then, I think this is going to wake a lot of people up. I was recovering better, not getting as sore. This was our best season in the last 15 years, and we had 14 guys on plant-based diets. It wouldn't feel great, had more energy.
One straw was 276. Today, 169.
Whoa, now you're talking. Most guys my age can keep up with the grandchildren. My grandchildren can't keep up with me. It's not one set of dietary guidelines for improving your performance as an athlete. Not for reversing heart disease, reversing diabetes. It's the same for all of them.
Someone asked me, how could you get as strong as an ox without eating any meat? And my answer was, have you ever seen an ox eating meat?
After having encountered this quite new to me documentary with the ideas that were quite revealing and challenged my perceptions as a lifelong carnivore, as a lifelong consumer of animal products, I also, obviously being a researcher in my mind, I didn't just buy the facts in the documentary, didn't take them for granted, did hundreds of hours of reading. Please do not mistake me for a professionally trained nutritionist. I am not. Right? I'm speaking about my own experience and my subjective research, but what the research, peer-reviewed quality studies, demonstrated that there is very strong shift in evidence, right, that demonstrates the balance towards the performance of plant-based diets and, for example, increasing your sports output, increasing overall well-being, having some impact on longevity and how people live and age, right? One of the biggest projects that I had to look at, China study, probably the biggest nutrition study that has ever been conducted, right, demonstrated that the consumption of animal protein was associated with development of chronic diseases, right? Which is available to anyone. I advise anyone watching to get familiar with T. Colin Campbell's China study. So this is what I did. It started as an experiment. I myself, I'm not a pro athlete. I really enjoy doing sports. I enjoy doing endurance sports. I enjoy doing combat sports. And the idea was to just, see if over a month I could gain some edge in my performance. This is how it started, with really selfish reasons, so to speak. And the idea that I could do good to the environment and to the animals came, of course, but it was a little bit secondary at that point. Whole food plant-based diet, what does it mean? It means this. That's the food pyramid now. At least the idea was to do it for a month. That's considered to be plant-based, but that was not part of my diet because it's not whole, it's processed. Neither was this. Processed. Being plant food, regardless of that, it's processed, so no. Oils, minimize the oil intake. That, obviously, sorry, Oreo lovers. Yep, exactly. How are your desserts? When I announced, of course, that I was going to do this one-month experiment, to my friends and family. There was a bit of a misunderstanding and shock. My parents thought I was going to be eating this. Friends very wishing me well, but that's what they were thinking. After a month of doing it, I went to see my doctor and we did the blood work before I started and after, 1 month later. That's what the doctor asked me, what are you taking? What happened? Because the change was dramatic, right? In cholesterol, in blood pressure, in none of the essential micronutrients changed, some improved, for example. I do have to mention that I supplemented B12 and D, right, and still do. My dogs got this, that I was going to eat that. Well, that's what they see me grow, right? My 20-year-old cousin who doesn't know much about all this thought that it's going to result in she doesn't know vegetables exist. And actually, this is what it turned out to be. And this is by far not as diverse as it can be. This is just a tiny fraction of the diversity of plant-based foods that exist out there. And it made me discover Arabic cuisines, Latin American cuisines, Central American cuisines, Asian cuisines, and a lot of them, especially from the areas that we consider blue zones, where people are known for their longevity, again, a lot of recipes tend to be plant-based. There's another little misconception, of course. Some people said, oh, you're becoming vegan. I don't necessarily want to label myself as vegan. As you can see, I have a leather belt on me and leather shoes. And every once in a while, I commit a major sin by having a spoon of honey. Right? So that is still acceptable. So I consider myself to be whole food plant-based, right? But in sometimes it's more strict than vegan because you are not eating any processed foods. Oreo is technically vegan, right? I did not go into a cult. I did not become a radical activist. And this was my major concern. What's going to happen to your physical well-being and performance? Before I went on the journey, I did research about people who were featured in the trailer of the film that you've just seen, and further research. And you can see that there's numerous endurance athletes, for example, Dotsie Bosch. There's the, what was the person who won the gold medal, Olympic gold medal, cycling, at the oldest ever age, right? So she was the oldest medalist. Lots of endurance sports people winning serious prizes. But then, of course, the idea is to ask, is there possibility to become physically strong, right? Not just endurance doing this. Yes. As you can see, there's some individuals here, some of them, the person on the left, she was vegan from birth, so never had any animal protein in her life, right? The gentleman in the middle grew up as vegetarian, became vegan later, so it's absolutely possible. And here the gentleman, not many times the strongest man in Germany, a couple of times the strongest man in the world, right? Quite enough proof for me that I was not going to perish as a result of eating only plants. So what changed after a month? First thing, as I said, I'm not a pro athlete, but I took 20% off my 10K running time. 20% in 1 month, not doing any special training. Training the same as usual, going out a month later, hammering it 10K, 20% of the time off. That was a big shock. 7 kilos melted off me. I never considered myself to be overweight in any way, but 7 kilos left effortlessly. Eating as much as I wanted ad libitum, so as much as I could. I used to suffer from allergic sinus blockages, you know, and headaches and tension headaches. They're gone, right? Which was quite unbelievable for me. I do get an occasional, you know, allergy drip because if I'm in contact with pollen, but it's nothing to do with what it used to be. So a major change there. And had a little issue with blood pressure, right? Hitting 150s, over 90, 95 sometimes. Months later, boom, down to normal where it's supposed to be. No medication needed. So to me, this was already proof enough that that's quite a remarkable result. If I can achieve all that without medication, wow, that was a big win. And I like my win-win-win solutions, right? But beyond that, I also saw that I'm having a social impact, that I'm actually impacting people around me, that people started asking me questions, inviting me to talk about that. And now that I've been doing it for almost 3 years, I've delivered multiple presentations. I'm getting really, really strong, genuine interest from people, which I'm quite surprised about. So, in terms of an economic impact, I feel like if I'm following this lifestyle, I'm supporting a more sustainable side of farming in that sense, and I'm creating jobs in another way that don't cause people to experience post-traumatic stress disorder like the workers at the slaughterhouses do, for example. And overall, once I did further research, right, I didn't do this originally for that purpose at the beginning, but when I looked at the environmental impact that I was not having anymore, I realized this is probably one of the, if not the, most impactful decisions from the environmental standpoint you can ever make. Probably, I would argue, even more beneficial than switching your car for an electric bike, right? And I will show you a little bit why. Of course, this is, if you look, this is the kind of an impact animal farming would have on the planet. If you look at the supply chain, you can see that there is a lot of social suffering, there is a lot of damage of the environment, there's a lot of displacement of wildlife, right? So these are not the kind of induced impacts we're thinking about when we pick up our steak wrapped in plastic in the supermarket. We hardly ever think about that. You may ask me, well, what about all the benefits? I realized that I'm not missing on anything. I'm actually gaining a lot by, I really like this expression, skipping the middle move, right? So if you skip the middle move, you go straight for the source of nutrients and protein that come from plants. I'm referring to cows here, by the way, skipping the middleman, right? That's the idea. As I go straight for the plant-based source of calories, I'm not losing on anything whatsoever, and I'm actually making a major impact. Ladies and gentlemen, quiz time. Of course, I had to. I would like you to take a little guess. Here you have a list of 6 items. Pictures will appear here next to each row. I'm very curious if you could guess what items are described here. This is the impact of those items in terms of water consumption. And that is 1 year of consuming that item will result in that much water consumption, that much land is needed, that much CO that's being released into the atmosphere, and equivalent of this much driving. So by the way, if you skip the first 3 items, that's about skipping all the driving you do in a year for an average person, right? Would you like to take a guess? Anyone? First item. Me. Come. Small, 75-gram portion per day. By the way, an average US citizen consumes about 250 grams per day.
Daily?
Daily, on average. On average.
In the US?
In the US.
25 million people?
250 grams per day, per person per day. An average meat consumption. Well, it's one of the highest in the world, right? Interestingly, Hong Kong is on top of the list as an area, and in Asia in general, the meat production and consumption exploded recently as well. What about the second item? Let's see. No, good man. Mr. Radu, you are fire today. Okay, so milk, indeed. We're not quite seeing the picture. The projector is a bit off, but that's okay. That's milk, guys. So an average glass of milk per day creates this much impact. It's much less, of course, an equivalent of driving, but if you look at the water, if you look at the land use, it's still very significant. The further we analyze this, the more we realize how inefficient it is to produce calories from plants by putting them through animals. It's one of the most inefficient things we can do on this planet. Number 3, eggs, of course, right? So still very big amount of water being consumed. I don't have data for the land use, and some impact in terms of CO2. What about the last 3 items? Would anybody like to guess? Fish. No? Avocados? No. Interesting. Well, Actually, this is my favorite food item.
It cannot be there.
Yes, beans. There you go. That beans, exactly, guys. These can be carbon neutral, right? They actually ameliorate the condition of the soil when you plant them. They actually leave the soil richer with nitrogen than it used to be, right? And they have very little impact to no impact. One after? Well, I never water mine as a bit of a
Vegetables, some vegetables.
Some fruits. Fruits and fruit.
Apple.
Good man. There you go. Apple, right? So in this region, I don't have to water mine. It uses very little land, almost no carbon footprint, and sometimes again it can be carbon negative because of the way it's grown, right? And the last one, guys, it's also a plant-based item, so it's a plant, right? But I wanted to highlight that not all plants have very little environmental impact. Some do have a significant environmental impact. And since we're talking about sustainability, we have to mention that. What is that?
Avocado, mango, maybe.
Mr. Radu, you know me all too well. Avocados, okay. There we go, guys. So there are fruits and vegetables that do have a significant environmental impact, that do require transportation, that cannot be considered sustainable, because growing avocados also has a major social impact. The water has to be diverted from the villages, from the locals, right? And sometimes criminal activity develops around the production of avocados and other exotic fruits and vegetables. Having said all this, I'd like to, just on a more serious note for a second, to take a very good look at this chart and to analyze the numbers going from top to the bottom. Since I switched from individual well-being to the impact that we're having on the environment, which I researched further on, and that made me reaffirm my choices, right, in going plant-based, I realized how inefficient the current food production is, which I mentioned already, right? Please take a look at this, that we actually use this much land for agriculture. Out of that land, we use 77% for livestock, meat, and dairy, right? Including grazing and including production of food for those animals. So that food could go into our mouth. This much we're using to produce fruits and vegetables for our own consumption, right? How much of your calories come from that 23% of land that we use? This much, hence the inefficiency. How much of protein comes from that? Well, this much, because we're also obsessed with protein. By the way, chances are, if you're watching this, a lot of you are over-consuming your protein on a daily basis, which may impact your kidneys in the long term. That's a different story. So if we look at this, if we do some very simple math, right, we can imagine how the future would look like if we decided to go at least partially plant-based, right? So we're asking ourselves, how many people can we feed on this planet, right? How many people can this planet sustain? Well, the answer here is at least easily double, if not triple, of what we're able to feed comfortably, while liberating quite a bit of land and returning it to the nature. And just a little question before I finish. Ladies and gents, how many calories do you think a cow needs to be fed in plant matter in order to produce 1 calorie worth of meat? How many calories does a cow need to ingest to then produce 1 calorie worth of meat? 10? Close?
7, 10.
Close? Go higher?
Higher?
Yeah? Good. So 1 moo needs about a hectare of land, right? Which is a lot of land. I mean, I cultivate a lot of my food on much, much less than that, right? And you need to feed 15 calories to a cow in order to produce 1 calorie worth of meat. Is that what you would call efficient? Unless you answer that question, right? And ladies and gents, I made a little approximation on how many people could I feed on less than half a hectare that I currently possess and I'm growing my fruit trees and other vegetables on. I estimated that with good preservation and storage techniques, right, without use of pesticides, without use of any machinery, about 10. And that's less land that is needed to grow one single animal, a cow. To finish this presentation, I have just 1 or 2 more minutes left. I wanted to highlight something else here. That I've talked about personal benefits. I talked about environmental and social impact. But don't forget that the market of plant-based products, some of them transform, right? Such as Beyond Meat burgers and other type of food. Fake steaks, fake smoked salmon, fake cheese, right? That the market is now really full of. You walk into any supermarket, you see a lot of them. It's a very lucrative, promising market. Right? So if any of you watching are looking for an interesting, differentiating business opportunity that is clearly commercially viable, that respects the animals, that respects the planet, and will benefit from quite a significant growth in years to come, look no further. Gone are the days when you have to buy a plant-based burger and see a list of ingredients like that. Now you have options that are very minimally processed, rather clean, produced with minimal impact on the environment. Gone are the days when you had to pick the chunk of soy from between your teeth when you drank soy milk. Now the alternative milk products are beautifully made, comparative in terms of price to the animal milk, and available everywhere. So there's very, very little excuses. And this is the photo from our partners, the SAG partner, official partner called Planted, who I visited about 2 months ago. That's the kind of products that are hitting the market today. You can find them in the local supermarket, right? That really are competitive in terms of pricing, that imitate the taste beautifully, that have very little impact on the environment, that are made out of 4 ingredients only, which is how much we have advanced in the right direction. And of course, that are cruelty-free. So just to finish, I wanted to highlight to you, ladies and gentlemen, that I wanted to present you with a triple win solution where everybody wins. You, your dearest, the planet, the economy, as well as could give you an idea of a wonderful business opportunity. Thank you very much for your time and attention.